we will not go down the highway with you. What we have in Milwaukee is now a fusion of Trump and Republicanism. There isn't any difference anymore. And in some ways, Trump has become more Republican. There's no more economic populism at all. In other ways, the party has become more Trumpist. It's now a trade protectionist party. It's now a party that is quite hostile to supporting Ukraine, hostile to NATO. And above all, it's a party that is committed to protecting Trump from the consequences of his attempted coup d'etat in January 2021.
And what does his choice of vice president tell us?
J.D. Vance is someone I've known for a long time. He's a person of great ability and great intellect. He's also a person of tremendous flexibility. He has been many different kinds of people over his short career, and he, I'm sure, will be many different kinds of people again. J.D. Vance is among the 2 or 3 most hostile to Ukraine members of the United States Congress, most friendly to Russian foreign policy goals. He's been very close to Viktor Orban. And of course, he's very close to some of the most wealthy people in Silicon Valley. There's going to be an attempt to sell him as a voice of the working man because he has this extraordinary personal life story. But he did run 20 points behind other Republicans in Ohio when he ran in 2022. And the support for him comes from the wealthiest people in America, not the poorest.
You talk of his changing politically, and you've written in great detail about the extraordinary changes, actually, in policy terms of the things that he has believed and talked about during the course of his political life, J.D. Vance, which is a short life, isn't it? Might he change again? I suppose that's the crucial question about him.
I think when someone changes so much with the weather, you have to assume the weather will change again and the person will change. I don't think where he is now reflects some deep-seated conviction. I think it reflects his sense of the political opportunities that were before him, and we'll see those change. The bet on Putin and opposing Ukraine, that may turn out to be a very bad bet, that there may be some modification to that. In a party that is pro-Israel, he's trying to present himself as someone who is against American leadership in Europe, against American leadership in support of Ukraine, but someone who can be trusted on Israel. That doesn't make a lot of sense, and that's going to be a problem for him too.
He doesn't seem to bring much to the ticket in terms of the idea that the vice president somehow widens the appeal. I mean, does he in any way?
He really does not, but what he does do, that's not the way Trump thinks. Trump had a vice president before, the way Henry VIII had a wife before.
And it's interesting, isn't it, that J.D. Vance is absolutely four square behind the idea, the false idea, that the 2020 election was stolen, and has spoken quite openly about what he believes took place on January 6th and what he believes was justified.
More than that, he has said that if he had been there in Mike Pence's place, he would have not done the constitutional duty of the vice president, that he would have instead have acted as Trump wanted. Mike Pence, before he took his courageous action, consulted every living American vice president, Republicans and Democrats, who all told him what Donald Trump wants you to do is illegal, unconstitutional, you can't do it, you mustn't do it. And this clear message of illegality is the message that J.D. Vance is saying. If it had been me, I would have broken the law and the Constitution for Donald Trump.
A wider thought, can Joe Biden
To replace him. I think this terrible, heinous criminal attempt on the life of Donald Trump has put an end to the discussion of the possibility of Joe Biden withdrawing and being replaced. He is now going to be an all Trump all the time extravaganza. And so he is going to be the candidate. And the forces that think Donald Trump is dangerous are going to have to find unity and saying, all right, this is our alternative.
David Trump? Thank you very much.
It is now 20 past 8. The growing expectation that Trump will be returning to the White House, the news of that pick of vice president comes as the new government here launches a strategic defense review. No dramatic change in policy is expected, as Labour and Conservative leadership share support considerations of the threat to be faced. But ministers must now prepare for a dramatic change coming from across the Atlantic. The newly emboldened Trump, if he does win, is assumed demand that Europe pays for a much greater share of its own defence and must stop paying ever larger bills to sustain the war in Ukraine, rather than pretending, as he sees it, that Putin can be defeated. This is what the man who Trump wants to be as vice president, J.D. Vance, the man who we should remember in this of all weeks could one day be president himself, has said about the war with Putin.
I mean, look, if he takes 20% of Ukrainian territory, is that a victory for him? I think probably
Nay.
yes, but if he still preserves Ukrainian independence, that's probably something that he can deal with if the alternative is dropping $500 billion in those things. Because the biggest concern is not will Putin win or will Murphy, but is the outcome fundamentally inevitable, something that we can't change, but we can maybe take a more
joining us, Mark Sedgwick, former UK National Security Advisor, and you had that job throughout the Trump era. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Nick.
We'll turn to the broader defence review in a second, but let's start on that if we may. When you listen to that, the view that we're spending, or what the United States is spending on defence, what do you feel about that?
Primarily, rather than just the amount of money that we spend, and Ed Stringer, who's on the program earlier, made that point very well. If in the UK, Nick, we spend 2.5%, 2.5% commitment the government and indeed the former government made right now, today, it would just be spent on plugging gas. It would just be spent on addressing shortfalls in training, maintenance, equipment, ordnance, etc., and would not deliver the kind of capabilities we need for defence and deterrence in the modern era. So we have to modernise, we have to transform both our armed forces and, even more radically, the entire defence enterprise that supports them. And that's true of our European allies as well, actually more true for most of our European allies than it is for us. But we should lead the way with this defence review.
Final thought, how worried are you? A man called Rob Johnson, who's was until recently Director of the Military Expenses Office and Norfolk Desperate challenge about it crunches the numbers assessing the scale of the threat, said recently that the UK Armed Forces cannot defend the British mainland fully. We're unprepared for a conflict of any scale. Is that right?
Well, he's right to point to that list. As I said, it isn't just about money. If I compare, if you just think separately about the nuclear deterrent, the ultimate guarantee of our security, and just look at our conventional forces, compare us to the US Marine Corps. The US Marine Corps is 30% bigger, it has 50% more aircraft, and it costs 20% more. So a lot of this is about modernization, transformation, improving the lethality, improving the capability, the readiness, sustainment of our forces, which at whatever level of funding is addressed. And this defence review really needs to get into that, and they need to be given the money to look at that in a transformative way.
Very interesting. Disappointment 2 days ago for against the final ambition in winning. However, the season is the real point from this last message was second. Automatically, or movement. That's actually right. Captain Leo Williamson in a moment, but first let's focus on the video.
We're never playing the next to draw. We're playing next to win.
Of course, they drew with Sweden already in April. Now Sweden have home advantage. Do you see any particular significance in that?
Not particularly, no. I think England have a strong away record as well. They'll be quite happy to, upset a home crowd as well. So they're more than happy to kind of take that into their control and use that as a tool to, propel themselves to get through tonight. So no, I don't see that being a particular problem at all.
It's a good question. I'm wondering why England are ready are scrambling to qualify for the defence. Their performances have been pretty different from the one we were trying to.
Yeah, it's been difficult qualifying group. I think both teams would have been, or all teams would have been that, particularly against Sweden and England. And compared to Republic of Ireland, which can pose quite difficult threats as well, and challenges. But the quality is certainly raised across the board. From France, their ball speed, the way they move the ball, the technical quality. But Sweden are a very well organized team, and just the level has just improved and raised and raised and raised. So whether it's England being a bit predictable when they're building out, I think teams have become a little bit more familiar with.
Retail business is a joint venture with Marks and Spencer, but they're having another row over whether Marks and Spencer is going to pay them the rest of the money for the deal. So one option to get around the problem of the contract bond period is to do a deal with Marks and Spencer to sell them the rest of the retail business. That's going to be a dilemma for the worldwide coming up.
Another watch this space. Andrea, thank you very much. Andrea Felsmith from Bloomberg. Interesting, Ocado saying it expects to see lower levels of inflation in the second half of the year when it comes to groceries as well, as we are closely watching that and the impact on interest rates, of course.
Sean, thank you for these 17 minutes. The coroner has ruled that there has been a systematic failure in NHS treatment of incurable conditions diabetes, but it's type 1 diabetes disordered eating that is the particular interest of the coroner. It's a condition that stems from diabetes, which is an autoimmune condition. It's caused by unknown, but it involves a constant need to take insulin, which the body no longer produces itself, which makes eating a chore and for some intensely distressing. Leslie and Neil Davidson were parents of Megan Davidson, who took her own life at the age of 7 and had this condition. Leslie already mentioned to us by Theresa May, so of course type 1 diabetes, something that she did to me earlier on in the year, and I'm pleased to say they've joined us now on the line. Leslie and Neil, thank you for joining us. Good morning.
Good morning.
What does it mean, I'd like to ask you first of all, Leslie, what does it mean to have now a coroner accepting the case that you have long made, that this is a condition that needs to be taken seriously, more seriously by doctors?
That was our aim, I suppose, because with Megan, that word was barely used by the people treating her. And of course, if you can't know what's the matter with you, and people are telling you that it's several different things, and everybody's got a different diagnosis, you lose faith in the people treating you, and there's no pathway, and that has been our aim, to get that diagnosis of time as a recognised condition, so that the people suffering from it can have a clear pathway to get some treatment. So this has been what we've been working for all those years.
I've been type 1 diabetes disordered eating, and Neil, what practical difference do you hope you believe it might make?
Well, I think this nearly 7-year journey has been about the integration of resources and services that are in place that just don't seem to talk to each other. So it's about getting a complementary integrated service that both on the eating disorder and the type 1 diabetes service integrated in a way that treats this condition appropriately. We've been striving for this for a long time, and it's a recognised problem within the NHS with regard to the gap between physical and mental health services. So although this is specific to us and obviously important from a type perspective, it also incorporates and involves a lot of other conditions as well. So this is quite a big step for an awful lot of people.
Yeah.
Not just
And it's also it's linking mental and physical health services, but it's also, isn't it, so often the business of linking up the treatment of young people as they move from being children and the wards of their parents and carers into having independence, and how the health service, Leslie, deals with that.
Well, I mean, our case in particular, Megan was 16 when she was diagnosed with her diabetes, and she was asked if she wanted to be a child or an adult at that age. She chose adult, and then we were held completely behind a brick wall of confidentiality, and we knew nothing about what was happening to her. And we've heard from people that we've been talking to that the attitude and the treatment regime just changes, and people feel like they fall off a cliff at 16, 17 when they lose those those children and young people services. So there needs to be some sort of proper transition, giving people time to grow, mature and learn to deal with things on their own, rather than having a lot of support and then going almost straight into none.
Yeah, and that of course is the case with other conditions, not just type 1 diabetes, but it certainly applies to this. I just wonder, Neil, we've had a statement from the NHS, from Dr. Claire Hamblin, who's the National Clinical Director for Diabetes at NHS England. So she says type 1 disordered eating can have a devastating impact on people and their families. The NHS has been piloting new dedicated services to the condition. As some Theresa May has also mentioned to us, are you pleased that at a high level in the NHS they understand the importance of this?
I think the level is the important factor, because we just recently learned that a lot of positioning and funding for type research and treatment has disappeared. It's not being carried on. So this is really a very, very important step forward in its recognition. This is something we thought about as being today.
Maybe there is the principle of the judge formation. Something since in Manchester. Morning, Chief John. Morning. How did you get quite back into that? Ready?
That's a question I've been asking myself for half time, to be honest, but it should be okay.
It is a dangerous sport.
Yeah, it can be quite dangerous, yeah. It's contact sport, and there's 8 people that want to win, so yeah.
Yeah, and you hurt your back.
Yeah, so I had my back in European Championships a couple of weeks ago, and yeah, it's been carrying on longer than I thought, so yeah.
I remember hearing you 3 years ago, I mean, after all that excitement we just heard there a bit of on the track, having to convince people it was a sport at all and it was an Olympic sport. But you think it's done quite a lot to change the attitudes of the kids who used to go just down to the local skate park, don't you?
Yeah, I hope so. That's the aim, is to kind of get kids involved and get BMX recognised on a larger scale.
But in other words, the kids go to skate park, don't just go for a drink in a bag.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
And how do you train? I mean, are you training in skills, or is there also fitness, a lot of fitness training as well?
So I'll say we're power athletes, so we do a lot of gym, which is a lot of heavy lifting, and then we do a lot on the bike as well, so it's a mixture of both, but we need a lot of strength.
But for people on the track, people in the velodrome as well.
It's super important. It's obviously indoors, so we can train at all times, especially being in Manchester with the weather. Yeah, it has everything in here. We have the physio, the science team. Everyone is literally based on one building. And obviously we have a BMX track indoors, so yeah, it works out really.
Well, can you mention one with the equipment?
Very well.
Good morning to both.
Good morning.
Tell us first a wider view, Dr. Tagan, about the exhibition. What is going to be there? What will people see?
Oh, well, one of the aspects of the exhibition, I think, is that we've managed to bring together objects across a range of media to tell the story of the gardens and the imaginations of these women. So everything from sculptures, textiles, painting, these are Sackville West tools, her gardening tools with her initials, which I think give you a kind of nice sense of the tactile element of gardening, but also reuniting objects and materials from private collections with items in public collections which haven't been on public view. So, for instance, reuniting one of Othing Marrell's early cameras from the 1920s with her photograph album of her garden at Garsington, and then bringing them into conversation with her textile collection, often with floral motifs and her own embroidery. So sort of showing her as an artist in her own right. She's often seen as a kind of patron and supporter of artists, but there's an opportunity to explore her own work.
Virginia Nicholson, tell us about Vanessa Bell's Charleston.
Well, I remember it as a child, during her lifetime. She died when I was a small child, but I can still have a picture of her sitting in the garden. It was an incredibly colourful, exuberant garden, full of a painter's garden, really, sort of designed around the colours that she loved, around the scents, the perfumes. It's a very, very sensual garden, and it remains that today. I mean, you can visit it for free today, and it's an extraordinarily sort of intense experience going to this place. It's full of sculptures and mosaics and colour and smells, and you get lost in it. It's a very isolated place, very peaceful.
Do all the gardens have that in common, or are some of them austere? I mean, do you see the different approaches of the women who be tended to.
Yeah, I think you do, and I hope to capture that in the exhibition and to kind of create a sense of distinctive rooms, garden rooms, exploring each of the gardens. And I mean, Virginia Woolf's essay, her polemical feminist essay, A Room of One's Own, was one of the starting points for the exhibition. So, in a way, taking that idea of a room of one's own outdoors, she writes in that essay about being kind of reprimanded when visiting Cambridge University for trespassing on the lawns of reserved for the male fellows and forest colleges, and she writes, I was a woman, this is turf, the gravel is the place for me. So part of that, I think, trespassing idea, and that large argument about women needing a private space in which to create, shapes my kind of approach to the exhibition and my thinking around taking that idea of an outdoor.
And Virginia, you mentioned that Charleston can be visited for free, and is visited, and all these gardens visited, because there is something, isn't there, about gardens that does really capture people's imaginations, and that it is not faded. These places are not faded as a theme.
No, I think that the Charleston Garden, above all, is a reflection outdoors of what is indoors in the house. It's the two are inseparable in a way, that you can take that sense of colour and art from off the walls. That art isn't just pictures, it's about creativity in your everyday life, it's about thinking about life differently. And they do that as well in the garden. So that sort of experimentalism with which they approached everything, socially, sexually, is in a way seeps into the way you look at this garden, which is full of extraordinary surprises.
Okay, and all of them, I'm sure, have their own surprises. We should say how long the exhibition is on for, Dr. Tobin, and how people can get to it. So it's the London Garden Museum. When does it start? When does it finish?
Well, it opened in May and it's gone until just before the end of September, so still plenty of time to visit, and
Wonderful.
some lovely gardens within the museum to look around too.
Thank you, Dr. Claudia Tobin and Virginia Nicholson.
And thank you all for listening. Have a great day. BBC News at 9 o'clock. Republicans have passed allegation.
So post number 2 is taken down, and it will become one of hundreds of millions of pieces of content that Meta deletes each year. Adult nudity, violence, hate, terrorism, self-harm, bullying, harassment, firearms, child sexual abuse, incitement. This is what keeps your internet clean. Rules created by the companies, enforced by machines and tens of thousands of content moderators like Nathan. I come to Baltimore to meet a woman called Denise Palucci. Denise might be the most experienced content moderator in the world.
The job title really should be professional suspicious bastard. Because, I can look at a new feature on any particular website and list off, 5 ways that people are going to abuse it.
Denise has seen social media empires rise and fall. She was working as a content moderator for an early social networking site called LiveJournal when Mark Zuckerberg was still in high school. She now runs a site called Wit Studio, and she does content moderation from home, where we are now, with her many curious cats. Most people don't realise just how hard this job is, it says. It's the nature of the digital world. Context is always key, and that's often missing online. Threats can be veiled. Satire can be misinterpreted as hate speech. The job isn't just technically difficult, it's psychologically draining too. It changes people.
I have still seen a lot of things that nobody should ever have seen. A lot of looking at absolute words and things that people can do to each other, just the day in, day out, denying of people being terrible to each other. And it permanently injured my sense of empathy for other people.
Social media is designed to clean up the internet, because full of the tens of thousands making hundreds of difficult decisions every day. And according to Denise, the policy people who make the rules and the content moderators who enforce them are not valued at the big tech firms.
You could not pay me to go back to a large platform because it's just so terrible. I mean, they don't invest enough in content moderation. They don't invest enough in their content moderators. They don't invest enough in their policy people.
If the stakes feel high for Denise on small, relatively friendly platforms like Video Studios or LiveJournal, they're much higher than places like Facebook or Twitter. As head of Site Integrity Council from 2018 to 2022, Yoel Roth, the guy with all the Twitter merchants as a whole, had to decide a lot of the company's content rules. He knew those rules should well, and they were always mistakes.
On Twitter, there were capabilities which other platforms like Facebook are considering. So think about something exceedingly unlikely. You might describe it as being 1 in a million. 1 in a million happens 500 times a day on Twitter. And when you're talking about content moderation, you are wrestling with unique pieces of content created by millions of people around the world in hundreds of different languages, and you have to make decisions quickly and accurately.
How hard is it when you're dealing with an always moving target?
I always think of the scene in Jurassic Park where, the velociraptors are testing an electric fence and are systematically probing for vulnerabilities. That's what people on Twitter were doing thousands of times a day, every day, testing for what those vulnerabilities could be.
Tech firms started investing big money in content moderation after 2016. And as the 2020 election approaches, all the big platforms probably are getting safer and less prone to manipulation.
Twitter measurably got better at dealing with abuse, at dealing with bots, at dealing with spam, at dealing with misinformation.
Content moderation might have made social media a more pleasant place to hang out, but it sets them on a collision course with the most powerful man in the world.
In a lot of ways, this starts with a doctored video of Nancy Pelosi that made her look like she was drunk. I remember that one.
Nancy Pelosi is a Democrat politician who at the time was serving as the Speaker of the House of Representatives.
We want to give this president the opportunity to do something historic for our country.
Trolls on Twitter had posted this video of Nancy Pelosi that was slowed down 25%. And because of the way it was manipulated, it made her sound like she was slurring her words.
The Wells team realized there are no rules about this sort of thing, so they decide to write some. They create a new policy, adding a little note, they call it a label, to mark misleading or disputed tweets that might lead to harm.
Up until that point, Twitter held the steadfast position that it was not the arbiter of truth, that Twitter would intervene on abuse, harassment, bots, spam, but when it came to whether something was true or false, we were not in a position to arbitrate that. And as we started picking apart the issue of fake videos, we realized that that wasn't a tenable position. There would be certain types of misleading information that lies on the internet that, one, we could arbitrate, and that, two, we should arbitrate in service of protecting people from harm. And then in May of 2020, Donald Trump tweeted a lie that California Governor Gavin Newsom had sent ballots to voters because he wanted to rig the election.
We've used an AI here to recreate Donald Trump's voice.
There is no way, zero, that mail-in ballots will be anything less than substantially fraudulent. Mailboxes will be robbed, ballots will be forged, and even illegally printed out and fraudulently signed. This would be a rigged election. No way!
The trust and safety guard of Twitter stand for longer.
We ultimately
George Floyd was killed by police. Trump tweets that when the looting starts, the shooting starts. Twitter is another movement. What about honest media being focused on personal?
The has integrity, and his name is Yoel Hall. Somebody in San Francisco will meet him up and tell him he's about to get more followers.
The day after Twitter first labeled one of Donald Trump's tweets, a senior White House advisor went on television to accuse me personally of being biased against conservatives and biased against Donald Trump. I will admit to being a Democrat and the ability for Democrats to be politics, but these tweets were then spun narratives that Twitter had used to say I'm not because of our policies.
This guy is constantly attacking Trump voters, Trump
working at Twitter are getting nervous about the amount of control they have over what remains in public view, and how little we understand about what they do.
So many years, and you guys call you're not Rolly, and I have spent the past decade of my life working at the intersection of media, technology, policy, law, and human rights.
One of the big things you've done, of course, is
Blow the whistle on Twitter.
I meet Anika at her friend's home in Baltimore. It's a boiling hot day and the aircon is cranked up as high as it can go, which isn't high enough. Anika left Twitter in 2022 after working as a senior member of the content policy team. The decision to leave and what she did next still looms large over her life. Anika wears a thin gold chain around her neck with a small whistle pendant.
Change everything about. Like I literally have stuff where they go back, pack, full. I never seen my Oprah. Took me into love and love and never be there. That is the life I follow.
Working with online speech was Anika's dream job. Unlike the majority of content moderators dotted around the world, she completely stuck in it. And more of this infection was even found Twitter.
I was influenced by people who still influence in that life. I remember I don't think this thing should exist, but it's my job every day. There is much power being placed in hands are like way too few people with absolutely no transparency and no accountability.
After Trump loses the 2020 election, he can watch his Twitter and his millions of followers. Constant shit about stolen elections and fraud committed against the American people. The inauguration, scheduled for the 6th of January, telegraphed that. We know what happens next. Many of us watched it through our screens at home.
We're going to the Capitol. Try and give them the boldness that they need to take back our country.
But the people working for social media companies that day had a very different view of what was going on.
That day, still going down a sort of logical argument to turn the Code of Incitement to Violence policy into what we call interim guidance, centered around content moderators all around the world. And, you know, it's a lot of time to read pages-long documents to figure out what's happening while we're in the middle of the crisis. And so, you know, I jumped on Twitter and I started taking down tweets myself.
In the middle of the mayhem, protesters forced their way into the heart of American democracy and start rampaging through the building. Trump tweets.
Mike Pence didn't have the courage to do what should have been done to protect our country and our Constitution. USA demands the truth.
Everyone, but we have seen tremendous results over many, many years by keeping those people on the street and locked in the building.
But you say it's not the most effective.
No, not.
What's the most effective?
Members of the church, as members of the church who have disciples of Christ, they share the gospel. And then social media is the age of the epicenter of the church, of the conduct of the church. So street contacting and knocking on doors certainly is sometimes that's very interesting.
Sure. How does it work for you, Islam?
I think key to the Quranic concept of, let's say, calling to the truth is that it's an invite. And it's not just an invite by words. God himself invites through revelation, the prophet invites through wisdom and good instruction through the straight path. The prophet is ordered to call for the straight path using the best mode of conversation. But the whole idea is that, you know, prophecy is meant to exemplify mercy and great moral character. You have to exemplify Quranic morality. If you just have the Quran out loud, you know, on the speakers in the city center, I understand that this is an attempt to draw attention, but it's also off-putting when it's too loud and people don't actually understand the context of what is being recited. Rather, the invite is about, you know, showing the compassion. We all have our sins. We're all carrying baggage on the street. A little touch of mercy and compassion and a positive thought that contains, you know, a prayer of peace, a prayer of joy, of healing. I think that touches most people. You don't need to mention God.
Marius was adamant that in the main you get positive reactions, all at worst indifferent ones. But when push didn't move, that what he has to say isn't always received positively.
Where someone look over the bulletin board, bash it down, I sympathise. Don't get me wrong, it's not so I actually haven't had it, throw some of these but we don't retaliate at all, more, I completely understand people's reactions, that we get offended, but it's more like, we can have a chat about it if you want, or we just, there's ways that you can just diffuse it, a gentle word turns away wrong of a sense. If a police officer asks you to move where it happened, or respect the law, we get the joke and we say, you don't want to get arrested, so you want to arrest them if possible. So, Dan, tell me about your experience as a man. Yeah, I was a rap and certainly a number of people generally are just not very receptive. That's what you would
you have to find creative ways in which you can be conversation with someone.
You talked earlier about it being character producing for these young missionaries.
Absolutely.
I mean, it must be when the door is shut in your face often, and even though you may not get absolute abuse, you'll get sort of quite heavy indifference almost.
Absolutely. So when young missionaries are small, many of them are quite shy and quite amiable. And what we have done is open their mouths, not with everyone, but to the group. They find great ways to share what Jesus Christ is hope, love, and very difficult as we do that by working together groups. It's not just a mission, it's all communities as well, and very active disciples of Christ.
You talk about relationships and importance of community. So how does social media help you evangelize?
I think the largest growing issue within our society today is what we call the dumb. So those who identify themselves as having no relationship. And I think there is opportunity for the church to create curiosity and to use social media for that. Videos, I mean, I've heard a video recently say they have more people come to their church recently to start making TikTok videos than through the usual kind of corporate publicity or invitation. And not to think we all think it should go on TikTok, by the way. I don't think that would necessarily be right for everybody.
Quite right, too.
Yes. So, but really, I think it's about creating curiosity about faith, about Jesus, because I think you will either don't know anything about faith, or they think that they know information so there's a combination of is that between the emphasis that you place on relationship, the importance of relationship, and the your broad and that somehow social media is important. That's not a place where relationship is built or a very good place for relationship.
I know it does. I've had no experience in the last 10 or 25 years. It's the perfect place in the world to personal time and reach out.
Have you been on Twitter?
Yeah, I've indeed had Twitter. Twitter is not the most successful platform for having conversations. It's certainly Facebook and Instagram are social media platforms. You can certainly build strong relationships and trust over a period of time that help those individuals in reconciliation to actually draw closer to find some hope and peace and light, because this rising generation, these young people are so lost and they don't know where to find food, and yet if you apply social media opportunities well and carefully, many relationships.
Let's focus on social media. Only because I have a 23-year-old daughter who tells me all kinds of stories about experiences and encounters on social media, including with religion. It's a good landing place to find information and to network with people. But there is a huge danger to depend on social media to convey a message of love and compassion and belief in God. There are so many voices on social media, some of which have hijacked the different faiths we're talking about, some of which are extremely conservative and misogynistic, from the Christian right and the Muslim right, the left and the incels, and all of that. It's completely absurd. So newspapers will communicate with the they were all sorry if I make the wrong presumption, but at least we have no idea about the upside of that thing for the young people who, as far as I understand, find it really difficult to really say they can't be themselves online.
So how do you answer that, Darryl? You were positive about using social media, but I mean, it is a bit of a sewer sometimes, isn't it?
Well, what's the serious thing? Well, but none of us here today stand up and talk to the voice, then who's that sure will become anyone else? And it just takes all of us to stand up with a positive voice, with Christ-like, kind, generous, loving, compassionate, and a forgiving way unless we do that, we will lose the battle. Kind of. The sort of stuff you're talking about, the sort of evangelism and witness and mission that you're enthusiastic about, it's not something you say Church of England was at the forefront of then.
Well, it is one of the top 3 priorities of the current Archbishop. Enabling the church to develop in the I think we are on a journey to find a better way of talking about evangelism. As I mentioned earlier, I think people are put off by actually the word evangelism because of its connotation. But everyone in our teams knows people in their local community, in their places of work, and it's about equipping them to be a missionary disciple wherever they are. I think sometimes people appear to that they aren't going to know the answer to the question, what are the people are offering people?
What are those negative connotations you think of a word like evangelism?
I think it is around this word coercion. So I think it's where evangelism has been done to someone, where someone feels that they have been under pressure, that they weren't clear what they were being invited to, that there was going to be some invitation as part of that. And so I think that's where people sometimes worry about the sort of morality, the ethics of evangelism.
The potential of the boom in Western classical music in India should the focus be on Western composers like Haydn, or Indian film composers like A.R. Rahman, or the rich legacy of Indian classical music. Indeed, how can all these musical influences be honoured?
This is Ashwath Narayanan. I am 32 years old and I am a Carnatic of music. It's an oral tradition. It's just passed on from one generation to the other.
但係聽日哥哥，但係聽日我哋要去呢個 musical theatre 喎。咁你直接喺 musical theatre 喺圖書館跟住去 musical theatre 可以啊。你 lunch 即係你 lunch box 要擺多啲嘢。
So my uncle Palga Chivinad, who's my guru, this time while I was traveling was there, heard me sing class I'm not a full-time musician, I do have a day job. I'm a business development executive at an IT shop. So where should I stand is a role completely artificial.
爸爸入油喎，我講爸爸要入油啊！爸爸要入油。No, that's fine.
have been educated in, let's say, primarily English-speaking schools, and they have had access to more culture, global culture. You know, that the 90s generation that grew up watching Friends and eating McDonald's food, and when they started having kids, they realized that they wanted to give their children experience to learn. We've kind of been working with this generation of parents who's difficult for teenagers. And how do we expose them to different culture and introduce it in a way that's palatable to children who are Alex members or IB members? So a lot of the decisions we have to and the music is always good, but what obviously is having a transition with technology. So we no longer have the luxury of the blues program where the source that the blues house for years and sort of provides and deserves a large degree of recognition. So how do we take a music that's been created in that context for a technology which is still authentic, but relevant, palatable, accessible in our lives? Look at in a way, there are a lot of positives associated with it, right? It allows parents who are not necessarily from the backgrounds to understand the benchmarking, to understand the progression. For us, what we've been trying to do with not only Carnatic, but Hindustani music as well, and it's to sort of create a creative structure for children to learn. It's a great opportunity, not only for children in India, but people from the Indian diaspora worldwide to sort of say, okay, this is a bit of my culture and I'm learning it, but also at the same time, this is how it's benchmarking against something else. As long as you're working with the authentic it's a great idea. What's really exciting to me is this generation of musicians who've grown up with us are able to connect the dots in ways that many others couldn't. And that's really
哥哥，你一條條嗰啲乳酪咧，個 yogurt 咧食晒未啊？一條條嗰啲。爸爸講咩？爸爸講咩？啊？你一條條乳酪食晒未啊？你一條條個 yogurt 食晒未？唔使買係嘛？啊？即係要買啊？即係要去 Sainsbury 買咩？
delve into the complex and unruly rivalry. There's so many like oligarchs and Egyptian one, you know what I mean? But that's like his brother, that would become the Achilles heel in the end. The rise and fall of Oasis. Listen now on 50 Cent.
Financial Radio 4's regular look at the world of PR. Spin Doctor and business managers business over the last week.
Hello and welcome to When It's the Fan, BBC Radio 4's podcast about the invisible complex of spin, quietly hums along, shaping so much of what you can hear. And what a week has been for that. With me, Stacey Owen,
And me, Simon Lewis. In this episode, we try to make sense of an extraordinary and terrifying weekend of political drama in the US and reflect on England losing out once more on the main prize at an international football tournament.
yes, we're having a look at two areas of PR not often discussed in public: loser PR, by which I mean how to lose in public, and elder PR, by which I mean, well, the art of giving fan-hitting counsel to very old and very powerful men. And the losers are men.
We are looking at President Trump. He is pumping his fist, but clearly Secret Service wants to get him out of this situation.
A rapid number of shots, possibly 6 or 8, but it was clearly gunfire.
I tried to get a hold of Donald. Apparently he's doing well. There's no place in America for this kind of violence. 6. Well, to borrow from and misquote the late Margaret Thatcher when the IRA tried to murder her, this was the day Donald Trump was meant not to see. You know, Simon, somebody wrote that line. It may have been Lady Thatcher herself, it may have been a long-time press scrutiny moment of historically heightened tensions, and enter Elon Musk, the X, Twitter, of course, followers on that platform posted about New York Times, exactly, they are truly callous and despicable human beings, not a shred of empathy. Now, if you realise the kind of peace before this continues to bother to cause, you know, it's difficult not to be concerned for the United States, no matter how much you love that country, as I do. The use of words, time, show, he told cheering MAGA fans at that event, and he said, how's your husband doing? Anybody know? For the record, Paul Pelosi was beaten with a hammer and suffered destructive stroke and nearly died. He was 82 at the time, and very much still with us as we hope. So, in his life, Trump's instinct has always been to raise the temperature, not lower it. He says he's going to use different language later in the week in his acceptance speech at the Republican convention. We could see, but I'm not sure the choice of the band for his vice president candidate just happened to be quickly now centre-right season. Let's see. Carrying those and indeed for media that might want to hold conversation that there is now in the United States a sort of religious around, and in terms of public relations trying to push back against Reformation, that's almost impossible for the White House, or a difficult thing to deal with in PR. And there is a spider of emotion around this Trump campaign, which is trying to doesn't mean that it's the right thing.
And as you said to us today, program, and that's all by language, specified now, so interesting how language can come back to it, even if at the time it wasn't intended. I think we'll see this episode actually change the terms of engagement in US politics. As you say, Donald Trump now has a candidate, he now has a nominee, as they state that, and the convention will forward. It's not clear how long this is going to last. Dialogue, PR about Biden's now taking the central so long. The conundrum in this communication is going to be quite simple. They'll have to evolve at some step down to maximize party party presidency. With some donors, including family members, who we convinced to continue. I've seen it before. It's a stalemate. Advisors end up neutralizing each other, and the principal is left only listening to his or her staff and family members. There'll be many conversations, I'm sure, among these views, but I just don't know how many of those conversations will be Joe Biden himself. It's possible the case that we can listen to either on one stage of the right international relative or turn on to listen to what may or may not be many people have been
it really boils down to saying you're all wrong and I'm right. And that's what Eddie's doing. So, you may really that's the stolen side of the government. And Colden was lost the country. And the country was partly. This is because it is very difficult to find old and powerful men. All women for that matter, although let's face it, most of them are. New York still demonstrated of very much of old men. Older man over New York City. The ladies in there is over yet, planet. Guys in their 80s and 90s speak really admittedly truer in China and Japan, Singapore, in India. It is very common for well-intentioned old men such advising the very old is an art in our business, and it's our business is a lucrative one as well. Older folks have little to do. They don't care about the next job or the theories on naming what you doing. They're stubborn. They tend to have been right about most things for a long time. It is. They're an expert in the art of older PI at work in the White House. It's so he or she needs to keep it short, keep it clear, give